And this is Phase 3, General, Chapter 6. Okay, so the first topic we're going to talk about is sellable listing. So exclusive listing is a measure of confidence from a seller. There's 100% assurance of your commission. MLS listing shows you the cooperating commission that's being offered, but it gives you the advantage of putting it on the market and offering it to other realtors, which makes it a lot easier to sell. But if you have an exclusive listing for a very hot area, hot property, or very highly desired address, you can definitely go down the route of exclusive where the commission is usually going to be a lot higher too. Okay. Reasonable time frame for market exposure. So you want to put it on the market. You don't want to list properties less than 90 days typically on the Toronto MLS. They won't have enough exposure, and you might not achieve what you're looking to do. Now, you also want to make sure that the information is accurate. You want to do something called a mortgage verification, as well as the material facts about the property. If you don't do the mortgage verification properly, you might be off a few $1,000s in numbers. You might have heard of this. This is where you are selling the home for one of your clients, and you're trying to determine how much money they're going to walk away with after they pay all the fees. And then you haven't checked into the mortgage verification, and you don't know that the bank wants a penalty for $7,000 extra. And that's where things can get really ugly.
Would the mortgage specialists they work with not do all the numbers for them and everything like that?
Well, let's say you're listing the home, and they say to you, Kyle, first I'm going to list my home, and then when I sell it, I'll buy another home. And then they'll say, well, I've got $100,000 equity in here. But what happens is we didn't do the mortgage verification form, and when they sell the home, we find out they owe $8,000 penalty. So now they don't have $100,000 down; they only have $92,000 down. That might be a problem for you, because that's going to come back to lack of professionalism. That's going to be fiduciary duty. That's going to be a whole bunch of stuff going wrong.
Okay.
So it's something that you have to verify. So just like as if you were going to buy a car or any other product that has a title, you probably want to make sure that you understand what the loan is and how much it'll cost to get that loan taken off.
Okay.
Right? You want the final numbers. You want the closing numbers before you give someone a calculation and then they don't qualify to buy the next house because they're $8,000 short.
Okay.
That would be a big problem. So the listing price should be reasonable for potential buyers so that you don't lose their interest, obviously. You want to demonstrate all of the same things that we talk about all the time with competence, ability, resourcefulness, positive attitude. You want to help demonstrating that you are helping to inspect the property properly so that when you present it on the MLS and for sale to other people, that it's going to get the best market value for itself. Now, the thing that you're going to practice a lot is the CMA, which is a competitive market analysis. That's basically where you're taking the comparison of properties that have been selling the last 12 months. You're going to be looking for trends, and you're going to be looking for comparables, but that are close. So you're going to be looking at expired listings, the new ones, and the ones that have been sold. You're going to be looking at different scenarios where you'll be looking at homes without the basement apartment and with. And what you do have to understand is that the CMA is never actually an appraisal. The appraisal has to be done by an appraiser who's certified for that, and that's usually used for financing purposes. But the CMA will be just a general market value type thing, but based on facts, generalized. Okay, so the problems with an overpriced property, which I don't think I really need to educate you on, but if we look at the book and we looked at what the problem is with an overpriced property, you're going to deter all the good potential buyers that are looking for a property at a fair price. You're going to have a lot of people not looking at it. It's going to be a lot of time wasted. A lot of more advertising expenses are probably going to get wasted too. And it also shows that the person who's working for you is not doing a good job because they haven't done the research. Now, gathering property details, this is where you want to spend a little bit of time when you sit down with the seller. Don't be in a hurry to list a property, okay? You want to kind of look at everything. So you want to look at their easement, their taxes. You want to get all the information you can whatsoever. And if they don't have any documentation, you probably got to visit the local municipal office and pay for it and get some copies of some surveys or whatever the case is there. Because you got to remember, when you put a listing up, you're liable for the information you're writing on that listing. So you can't exaggerate stuff or make up stuff and just see what happens. You don't want to be in that scenario. You're legally on the hook for it. So You want to talk to them about any modifications and changes in the structure of the property. You want to know if they ever got a permit for it. So let's say we take a common scenario, the favorite one in the GTA. You sell a home to somebody who's looking for a basement apartment. They buy it, doesn't have a permit. Next thing you know, the tenant moves in, complains to the city, and the city shuts down the basement and fines the owner $10,000. Guess who they're going to come after? Right? So the first person that comes to mind is the person that sold them the house. I don't know if they can win money from you, but they're going to try, which is just going to give you a lot of aggravation and waste a lot of time that you don't want to. So the best thing to do always is just verify it, and if it's on the listing saying that this basement apartment doesn't not have a permit, do the disclosure on the listing.
Okay.
That's better. So then
you can say there's a basement apartment, but it's not legal.
Right. You can say that.
Oh, I didn't know that. I thought you couldn't mention the word apartment at all. For example, my house in here, I have an illegal basement apartment with a tenant in it.
Right.
When I sell this house in the spring, which we plan on doing,
Yep.
I just got to say it's not a legal apartment.
Right. You'll put a clause inside the details of the listing saying seller does not warrant status of basement apartment.
Oh, okay.
So if they buy it, they know that they're buying it, assuming it in the same fashion that it's in right now.
I was under the impression you couldn't mention anything about apartment, rent, tenants, nothing.
Well, that depends who's looking at it, right?
Right.
But in the case of when you're selling it, you want to keep your disclosures completely covered, and you don't want to be on the hook for any liability.
Right.
Okay. So, yeah, we've kind of covered that, and we also want to look at any out-of-date systems, like you want to look at the breaker and electricity in older homes. You want to make sure they're up to 200 amps from the 100 amp change. You want to look at all those things because those are all fire hazards. Those are all situations that will be a problem down the line. You want to identify the shadows and fixtures clearly. So if I want to make sure you're going to leave that same fridge, I'm going to open it up and write down the serial number in my notes. So just to protect myself and protect you too, just to avoid those situations. And also pay attention to any hazards, sewage problems, water wells, anything that you see that's out of the ordinary that you want to check out. Just take your time to check it out. Okay? And that's what the book is telling us to do, and that's what you want to practice as well. Okay, marketing the listing. This is where we talk about false and misleading advertising and deceptive business practices to promote the services. So abbreviations shouldn't be confusing. They've addressed that. Advertising price should be very clear, not misleading. But you'll see some realtors that will say you can buy this house for $700 a month.
Yeah.
You've seen those kinds of ads.
Yeah.
Contests must be followed through. You can't make up a contest that doesn't have a closing date, the rules, and the region, and the chance of winning.
Right.
So it's got to be completely explained.
Okay.
Coupons, you've got to identify what it's for. It's got to have the disclaimer, and they have to be consistent. The conditions have to be the same. So you can't say like, hey, buy this house and get a trip to Mexico, and then they buy the house, and then you say, well, nope, it was only for the first half of the year, not for the second half. Sorry. You can't do things like that, obviously. Fine print's got to be clear. Minimum is 7 point. So you just remember that font size. Free offering should not be included in any conditions. MLS, you can't. There's a Competition Act, and there's also false advertising, misleading restriction on anything that you do naturally because it's regulated. So you have to be very, very careful. You have to do pictures which are the exact pictures. You can't do you can't do a replacement picture or a like picture, right? And if it's not the exact picture, then you'd have to write like artistic conception or like illustration for purposes only or whatever, something like that. Promotional claims, you have to give evidence that you're going to be providing that promotion. Okay. So there's a whole bunch of REBA 2002 advertising guidelines, whole bunch of them, all to do with false advertising, not taking consent from the right parties. Like if you sold my house and now you're telling everyone about it, but you don't have written consent, that's a problem. Inaccurate representation is where you're just delivering information that's just wrong. Claims, like we talked about the day before, as commission as low as 1%, that's got to have a disclaimer with it or a disclosure with it. So if there's conditions attached to whatever you're promoting, so if you say that you can save up to $2,500 if you list with me, you got to explain that. And if you say you sold over 100 properties, that's got to be factual, like trade record recorded. So you got to have proof of it too. So advertising honors and dates, you have to provide the date you won an award. So if you won the award for being #1 realtor like in 1997 and you haven't been #1 ever since, you can't keep advertising it in 2015 that you're the #1 realtor. It's false advertising.
Yeah.
So you have to disclose a date of that award on your ad. Yeah, so everything's really like crystal clear. They don't want any misleading information. They don't want any misconception. They don't want anyone thinking something different that's not true. They're really, really particular on how clients will perceive what you're putting out in the marketplace.
It all comes down to common sense and common integrity.
It does. There's a lot of integrity required, and a lot of people obviously don't comply by that, but that's why these rules have been put in place, and they do get enforced very strongly. Okay, so I'm going to end this chapter right now on the video,